And she's going to tell you just a little bit about Uncle Ben, who was her brother. And he was kind of like, he was our family's war hero. That's what we think.
This is a picture of him, and his name was Benjamin Gideon Rolfe. And
he's a pilot.
He was working up at Kennecott Copper when the war started. Well, here was these fathers going off and leaving their children, and he didn't think that was right. And he had 3 things that would exempt him from the war because he was working at Kennecott. That exempted him. And because he was the only son of a widow, well, that's something I should tell you. When he was 7 years old and I was 9 years old, our daddy died, and we never did have a daddy again after that. And so he was the only son of a widow, and he was exempted for that. Plus, we owned a farm, and he was exempted from the farm, but he hated to see a lot of these husbands go and leave their wives and children, and so he thought that he should go and fight for his country. So he wanted to be a pilot. So he took the test and was entered into being a B-17 pilot. And he went to Roswell, New Mexico to learn how to fly a plane. Well, in the process of flying these planes, him and another plane crashed in midair. And he almost lost his life then, but he was saved.
This was training.
Yes, in training. And he came down and he just missed a barbed wire fence by, just inches when he came down. In a parachute. But he was saved, and so he came home to see us one Christmas, and I helped another lady, and I run a PX in Kearns for a postage exchange, and it's where soldiers came in and bought cookies and ice cream and drinks. And your grandma used to go up there a lot of times with me. Anyway, the lady that worked with me, she had a daughter, and we introduced them, and they started corresponding, and then she went down there to Roswell, New Mexico, and they got married. Well, then they came, it was about, maybe 6 months later, they came home, and he had to go across the sea. So he came up, and we drove his car back to Rapid City. You know where the bases are? To Rapid City.
Right by Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, by Mount Rushmore. And that was the last time we saw him. He got on the train and left to go. And we drove his car back home. And he got over there flying, and they were sending just lots of planes from England over to Germany. And they didn't always staff those airplanes very good because they were sending out so many. And the day that he went over, he didn't have a navigator with him. You know what a navigator is? Does somebody want to tell us?
Like something that like told it.
They can tell where the land
They kind of read a map and
tell where they are. Anyway, this mission that they went on, they just took plane after plane after plane and was bombing in Berlin, where Hitler was. And he got hit, and he radioed ahead and told him that he would try to go to to France and land in France because he'd been hit with the plane. But we didn't ever know what happened to him. He was missing for 2 years. And then the war was over with, and afterwards we found out that he went down in the Zuider Sea in Holland, and some Dutch people pulled their bodies out, and they got just 3 off of the plane. They got him and his co-pilot and the gunner. And they buried their bodies and kept them there till after the war. Then after the war, the Red Cross went in to find out what had happened to a lot of these people. And they found his body, and then they shipped it back home. They shipped it back home to us. And then we had a funeral. Well, we had a service first here when he was missing in action. I have some pictures to show you. Oh, and while he was gone, his wife was pregnant, and she had a little, let's see, where's the pictures?
You got it right out.
I got it.
Yeah.
No, I was looking for here. Here we are. This is him, and they got married down in Roswell, New Mexico. And then he never did see, he went over in November, and she was born in March, so he never did know whether he had a boy or a girl. He never did see his little girl, and she never did see her father. And then,
Tell them what her name was.
and they named her Benny Lynn. She's on the back. Okay, this is her as a little girl, as a baby. And this is a little girl when she came up to the post exchange where we worked. And this is what she was when she was in high school. And then she got married and had several children. But she lived down in Roosevelt, so we never did get to know her very well.
Yeah, I never heard that.
And this is pictures of when he was in high school and he was in the farmers. And this is telling when that he was missing in action and that. And this is him when he went out on a fishing thing and caught a lot of fish. And then this is when good to get when they was.
Yeah.
I want to see.
And that's where we lived in. That's where he lived in. That was the house. And then this is telling you about the bodies of 89 Intermountain War heroes. We returned to the United States for final burial. Left in October and was only over there 1 month, and he died 1 day before his birthday. And he would have been, he was 24 years old when he died. He'd have been 25 the next day.